College football playoffs, final rankings. They're here. They're finally here. Let's take a look at them.
So, as you all can see, the final rankings are here. We got Georgia number 1, obviously Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4, Alabama 5. These last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of controversy of who should get in and who should not. As usual, it's all the time. All this happens that time of year. Georgia, obviously going into the championship week, started off as number 1. Michigan leapfrogged Ohio State after they went into Columbus, beat them very handily. TCU, I believe, they were still at 3. And who was at 4? Michigan was at 4. There was a lot of talks. Well, first, before we get into who's actually in the 4, I want to spend some time talking about Alabama. So a lot of people were pushing for Alabama to be into the playoffs, right? Even before Ohio State lost, even before TCU lost a championship game, people were still saying, hey, we can't really count Alabama out just yet. I know they have 2 losses, but we can't really count them out just yet. And now, obviously, since Ohio State lost, and then TCU lost, and then USC lost, because remember, USC was in the 4th spot. Before the championship weekend, they played Friday, they lost to Utah, got smacked, they were out. So, you had 2 situations in where USC needed to win in order to guarantee a spot. TCU, I never thought TCU needed to win just because their resume was impressive. And since that their competition was Alabama, I felt like they were always still going to be good. I just thought that they needed to win to keep Ohio State out. But since USC already lost, Ohio State was already in. So a lot of people thought, hey, TCU needs to win to get into the playoffs, right? Then obviously Nick Saban was at the halftime at the TSU Kansas State game trying to give his team a valid reason to be in the playoffs, trying to make like a campaign or something. I'm like, yo, what is this? Like, he's at halftime talking about, yeah, I think, like, bro, this ain't got nothing to do with you, bro. We're here to watch the Big 10 championship game. I mean, not the Big 12 championship game, and you over here talking about why your team should deserve to get into the playoffs. Like, we don't want to hear that, bro. We don't want to hear that. So, obviously, TSU loses in overtime at the last field goal, which I don't know why they went for it. I don't understand. They went for it on 4th down and 1 at the goal line. Like, it doesn't matter if you scored a touchdown or not. The other team still gets the ball and a chance to win. So, I don't understand that play calling. Like, kick the field goal and then see if your defense can get a stop. Like, I don't understand why you're going for it on 4th down to score a touchdown when literally a field goal or a touchdown, the other team will still get the ball. And better yet, like what happened, you didn't score a touchdown, and now Kansas State kicked the field goal with a chance to win. I don't understand that play calling, but nonetheless, they won. Kansas State won, and TSU lost. Now, a lot of people were shocked that TSU didn't drop. I'm not shocked at all. And the reason why I'm not shocked at all is because their competition was Alabama. Like I've been saying, Alabama does not have an impressive resume to even be a college playoff football team right now. A lot of people say, oh, look who they lost to. Look who they lost to. Number one, if your only argument to get into the playoffs is your losses, you don't deserve to get into the playoffs. That's number one. No team, you can't make it to the playoffs solely based on who you lost to. Like that's not how this thing works. Like you gotta win something. Which brings me to my next point. Alabama has no impressive wins this whole season. None. They have no impressive season. They have no impressive wins this entire season. Their best win of the season was against Texas at Texas, and they were ranked, I believe, 21. And Alabama was number 1 in the country at the time, I believe. And by the way, if the starting quarterback for Texas plays that game and doesn't get hurt, Texas wins that game, and I really believe that. So let's get out the way. Your best win was against Texas at Texas while they were ranked number 21st. TCU, if I can remember, went into that same building on primetime on ABC and handled that same Texas team with the starting quarterback playing the entire game. So your best win of the season is TCU's standout performances when they went out and blew them out. You don't deserve to go in there number one. So TCU is out of there. We already know they're not going ahead of Georgia, not going into Michigan. A lot of people saying, yo, what about Ohio State? They got blown out by Michigan at Ohio State, a place where Michigan hadn't won in 22 years. I get that. But besides the fact that Ohio State, pound for pound, is a better team than Bama. Yes, Ohio State is a better team than Bama this year. This year, they're a better team than Bama. Besides the fact that they're a better team from top to bottom, Ohio State opened the season out beating Notre Dame, who was ranked number 4th. Now, I know they quickly showed they was fakes, but they did start the year off number 4 ranked in the nation. They beat them to start the year off, and they beat Penn State at Penn State, who was ranked number 8 at the time. Now, Ohio State has two wins against, at the time, 2 top 10 opponents in the nation. Name me the wins that Alabama has versus 2 top 10 ranked teams. Name me a win that Alabama has against a top 10 ranked team in the country. You can't find one. Not this year. And I get it. The SEC is clearly the best conference in the nation. It's not even close. The best competition, yes. But the fact of the matter is, the only 2 good teams Bama has played this year, they lost. And by the way, let's state the facts. A lot of people are saying, oh, Bama should jump in at 4. They're better than Ohio State. And they're solely looking at the matchup between Ohio State and Georgia. They're saying, oh, Ohio State and Georgia might be a blowout. Alabama's not getting blown out by Georgia. Well, to you, I say this. Well, Alabama lost to Tennessee. They lost by 3. Tennessee put up 52 points. Alabama lost on the last second field goal. What happened when Tennessee played Georgia when it was ranked number 1? Oh, I remember. They lost by double digits. The score didn't tell how bad the game was. Trust me, I was in Athens. I wasn't at the game, but I was in Athens. It was a blowout. Wasn't even close, okay? Who is Bama's other loss against? LSU. Oh, they lost to LSU in overtime by a touchdown. Huh. What happened when LSU played Georgia in the SEC championship game just this past week? Oh, they lost by 20. So the 2 teams that Bama barely lost to, Georgia blew both of them out. Does the game have a chance of being competitive because it is a rival game? Yes. Me as a Georgia fan, I know more than anybody. Anything and everything can happen in a Georgia versus Alabama game. I've seen backup quarterbacks come in a game for Bama and erase 20-point deficits like that twice, back-to-back years. So trust me, I know. But we have to look at the facts. The 2 teams that Alabama barely lost to, that y'all trying to say, oh, even though they got 2 losses, it's the 2 good teams. Georgia blew them both out. So why would the committee let a team in who already has 2 losses, number 1, and their 2 losses were against teams that they barely lost to, that Georgia both blew out, and Alabama will have to play Georgia in the first round of the playoffs if they get in. Georgia's going to blow them out too. You cannot tell me that if you barely beat those teams, if you barely beat the teams that Georgia blew out, Alabama's not getting ran through by Georgia. They're getting ran off the field. So that's number 1. Ohio State and TCU both have better wins than Alabama. I get it. Alabama, they have the losses, but at some point, wins have to come into factor. Ohio State has impressive wins. TCU has impressive wins on the road too. And by the way, even though they lost to Kansas State in overtime, they beat Kansas State earlier in the season by double digits. Okay, they was down by what, 20 something, and then TCU went ahead and won by double digits. So again, Alabama does not deserve to be in this playoff spot. Penn State finished the season ranked number 10 in the nation. Ranked 9th in the nation. Ohio State beat them at home. That's a rivalry game. Like, what are we talking about? Alabama has no impressive wins of the season. Y'all almost lost to Texas A&M. You lost to Tennessee. You lost to LSU. You struggled against Ole Miss. Like, come on now. Like, no, we're not. No. Okay, not that's not the way. Let's get to the main four. I think we're pretty much primed for a Georgia versus Michigan matchup in the title game. But please don't be surprised if TCU gets the edge over Michigan. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, the performance that, even though they lost, the performance that Max Duggan put up against Kansas State on that last drive in the fourth quarter, I mean, it was nothing but spectacular. Probably one of the best performances I've seen from a college football quarterback in a minute. Like, literally was gassed, basically ran the team down the field by himself. And they obviously couldn't punch it in at the goal line in overtime, but nonetheless, that performance was very, very classic, and I wouldn't be surprised if they, especially, you know, like I said, Blake Corman's out, but I mean, Edwards, he's been playing real well. But I'm interested to see, will that be able to carry two in the game versus TCU? Now, I think that Michigan's defense is a little bit better, right, than Kansas State and the teams that they played in the past. So I think that, you know, there'll be times in the game where they'll get stops. But I think what it's going to come down to is going to come down to who's going to stick to their identity. It was interesting watching the Michigan game because Michigan is a run-first team. And that's the reason why they beat Ohio State last year, because they literally ran them out the field, especially on that last drive. They didn't pass the ball on that last drive. They just ran the ball down the field, scored a touchdown. It was crazy because Michigan in the first half had 10 yards rushing. Yet they were up, or it was tied in the halftime. I can't remember. But what kept Michigan in the game was the pass game. It was J.J. McCarthy making the passes, the two big-time plays down the field. And then in the second half, they obviously went back to the running game. But Michigan, obviously, you know, aware that the running game was going, was quick to just like, yo, JJ, it's on you. Like, you want to take us home. So I'm interested, will Michigan continue to stick to the run game even if it doesn't work? Or are they willing to be like, yo, I think JJ can go out and win this game for us? Now, granted, I think TCU is a better football team than Ohio State. It was just shocking to me to see Michigan abandon the run game so quickly versus Ohio State. Like, after the first couple drives, they didn't have none. They was like, yo, we just finna pass this ball. And I'm like, dang, like, so it's gonna be interesting to see if they stick to that game plan, if they stick to the run. Because I think JJ has earned the right to, you know, have control of the game somewhat, especially with Blake Corum being out. Now you're gonna have to depend on him even more. And by the way, JJ can run the ball as well, so that will be interesting. But I think TCU has a better game on the air with their guys, and I don't know. I just wouldn't be surprised if TCU comes out with a win. I'm going with Michigan though. I think Michigan is gonna pull it out, but TCU got some dogs. And then obviously we got the Georgia versus Ohio State. A lot of people are saying that Georgia has the toughest matchup between the four teams, and I could see why. Just because Ohio State was so highly ranked the entire year until the Michigan game, that them at a 4 spot is kind of like, yo, they're kind of dangerous. But I think with Georgia, and again, this is not a knock on CJ Stroud, but quarterbacks like CJ Stroud doesn't really give Georgia problems like that, right? CJ Stroud is a guy who is going to beat you from the pocket more so as he's going to beat you with the run. Now, he's had some big runs, but he's just not going to like his first intentions is not to beat you with his legs. Especially when he's going up against a defense like us who's quick and they get to the quarterback. His main goal is, I'm going to beat you with the pass. CJ is very accurate with the football. Very accurate. Very accurate. And I'm talking NFL first round pick accuracy. But the quarterbacks like that don't give Georgia problems. And the reason why they don't give Georgia problems is because the front guys can get to the quarterback. So you can try to sit back in the pocket and make throws, but that front end is going to get to you. Unless you're making quick passes, the front end is going to get to you. So dropping back in the pocket, taking up all that time, you're really not going to have that much time in the pocket to make decisions. And if you do, it's going to be a man in your face, which means you're going to have rush throws, you're going to have throws after being hit, which resolves in turnovers. But if you do find a way to get protection versus Georgia, the secondary is the weakness of the Georgia defense. It's very easy to pick them apart with time. So if you get time on them, then it's trouble. But more times than not, Georgia's going to get to the quarterback. The quarterbacks, though, who give Georgia trouble are the guys like Bryce Young, the Caleb Williams, the J.J. McCarthy's, who can maneuver through the pocket, who can make time with their legs and can extend plays, right? Like I said, I think CJ, he can run the ball. He's no slouch. But I wouldn't look at him as a guy who can extend plays like a Caleb Williams or a Bryce Young. Like Bryce Young's first intention is not to run the ball. But when he scrambles to pass the ball, which makes him deadly, right? So I think Ohio State offensively is very talented, but it's going to come down to CJ. And like I told you guys, like, I don't want to seem like a hater, but CJ Stroud has to have one of the most overrated quarterback careers in college football. People was talking about how he was a Heisman candidate. He was one of the best players in the country, which that's not bad. I mean, he's a Heisman finalist. But I never got the hype about him. And the reason why I never got the hype about CJ is because he has no big name. He has no big wins at this moment under his resume. Now, he could very much go into the go in the championship game in the playoffs and get a win and have that big win. But at this moment, he has no big wins under his belt. He's been an Ohio State quarterback for the last 2 seasons. He's had no Big Ten championships. Until this, thank God that USC lost the game. He would have had no playoff appearances. This is his first playoff appearances. And most importantly, if you're a Ohio State fan, 0-2 versus Michigan and no national championship appearances or wins, right? One thing is Ohio State is used to: deep runs in the playoffs and beating Michigan. So I never got the hype about CJ. Like, I understand the talent is there, yes. But I've seen guys like Bryce Young, who's played with less talent, still put up amazing numbers. Right? Like, think about it. The last two seasons, CJ has played with Chris Oliver, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Marvin Harrison. All those guys are going to go. All those guys, if they haven't already gone first round, are going to go first round. He's had all that talent and one playoff appearance. And by the way, the playoff appearance was not by his doing, by the doing of somebody else losing. No national championship wins or appearances, and no Big Ten championships. And no wins versus Michigan. And people are like, oh yeah, CJ Stroud, he's overrated. Do I think he's a good quarterback? Yes, I think he's a good quarterback. Do I think he'll do well in the NFL? Yes, I'm sure he'll be very well in the NFL. But if we're talking about college, strictly college, especially if he doesn't win his game versus Georgia, we have to look at CJ Stroud's career as a collegiate football player and say he was overrated. Because he got nothing done. And I think he's a good guy. I really do. He's a great guy. I'm sure he's a great person. But I'm sorry, I gotta keep it a buck. We seen dudes like, again, Bryce Young, J.J. McCarthy, even guys like Stetson Bennett. They don't have the weapons that CJ has had. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple other quarterbacks who've put up good numbers. But they don't have the weapons that CJ has had the last 2 seasons. By the way, Ohio State team overall has been good the last 2 seasons. And they still haven't been able to get it done. So, I mean, yeah, that's that. But as far as this game versus Georgia, I still think Georgia's going to pull away. A lot of people saying that they had the toughest matchup. Honestly, as a Georgia fan, like I said, going up against guys like Caleb Williams, guys like Hendon Hooker, JJ McCarthy, those are the guys that scare me. Like, CJ doesn't really scare me like that, if I'm being honest with you. He's a good quarterback, but I'm not going into the game like, man. I mean, it's Ohio State, so it's always going to be a tough one. But I'm like I said, like the guys like Caleb Williams and those guys, trust me, when USC had the 4th spot, I was begging Utah to win. And I'm a Caleb Williams guy. I think he's going to win the Heisman. He might win back-to-back if he has a good season next season. But I think Caleb Williams is that dude, the closest thing to Patrick Mahomes since Patrick Mahomes. But I was begging Utah to win that game on Friday. Because as a Georgia fan, I did not want to see us face up against Caleb Williams. So, will it be a blowout? I doubt it. I doubt it'll be a blowout. But I think with the experience of Georgia in the big time moments that they have, you add that with the fact that since they're number 1, they get to pick where the game is being played. And of course, they're going to play it in Atlanta because that's basically home field. With the fact that they're used to playing with the pressure, right? They was number 1 all year pretty much last year. They won a championship, so they're used to the pressure. And with the pressure that the Ohio State Buckeyes have, a lot of people say, oh, Ohio State, they don't have any pressure. Like, they're the 4th team. First of all, if you're in the playoffs, everybody has pressure. There is no team in the playoffs that does not have pressure. Ohio State they still have to prove to us that they're a team that's competitive. Like, come on now, we can't just say that just because they're in the 4th seed that they don't have any pressure. Yes, the heck they do have pressure. It's pressure on CJ Stroud to have a big time win. It's pressure on those guys at Ohio State to get to the national championship. They haven't been there since Zeke did it. Zeke and them did it in 2015? It's still pressure. It's still pressure. You have to prove to us. You still got to prove to the committee that they made the right decision in putting y'all over Bama. It's still pressure. So let's not act like that Ohio State is going to come in free nilly-willy. And no, bro. It's like, stop it. So Ohio State's going to have pressure on them as well. And from what I've seen these last 2 seasons, they don't deal with pressure as well as Georgia does. And I think Georgia's going to win. Besides the fact that Georgia is a better team, I believe, because I think Georgia is deeper both on the offense and defensive side. Now, I think offensively, you can make an argument that Ohio State is better, which I wouldn't really argue that. But as we've seen these last couple seasons, when it comes to the SEC and these Big 12 teams, these Big 10 teams, Pac-12, ACC, the one thing that those guys can't compete with in the SEC is defense. It's defense, and in particular the front end. Guys can't handle that. They can't handle that. And that's been the recipe for disaster for all the other conferences that get into the playoffs outside of Georgia, outside of the SEC. So, will Ohio State be able to handle that? I doubt it. But nonetheless, it'll still be a good game. I don't think it'll be no blowout. At least not the blowout we saw when they played Michigan. But nonetheless, I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a great playoff games. A lot of good games coming up. So it's going to be great to see how it goes now.